upon the horses, for the sloughs were exceedingly mucky. Peggy, indeed, my sorrel pony, being lighter of weight, was not crusted much over the shoulders, but Smiler, our youngest sledder, had been well in over his withers, and none would have deemed him a piebald, save of red mire and black mire. The great blunderbuss, moreover, was choked with a dollop of slough cake, and John Fry's sad-coloured Sunday hat was endued with a plume of marish weed. All this I saw while he was dismounting, heavily and wearily, lifting his leg from the saddle-cloth, as if with a sore crick in his back. By this time the question of fighting was gone quite out of our discretion, for sundry of the elder boys, grave and reverend signors, who had taken no small pleasure in teaching our hands to fight, to ward, to parry, to feign encounter, to lunge in the manner of sword-play, and the weaker child to drop on one knee when no cunning of fence might baffle the onset. These great masters of the art, who would far liefer see us little ones practise it than themselves engage, 6 or 7 of them had come running down the rounded causeway, having heard that there had arisen a snug little mill at the gate. Now whether that word hath origin in a Greek term meaning conflict, as the best read boys asseverated, or whether it is nothing more than a figure of similitude, from the beating arms of a mill, such as I have seen in counties where there are no water-brooks, but folk make bread with wind, it is not for a man devoid of scholarship to determine. Enough that they who made the ring entitled the scene a mill, while we who must be thumped inside it tried to rejoice in their pleasantry, till it turned upon the stomach. Moreover, I felt upon me now a certain responsibility, a dutiful need to maintain, in the presence of John Fry, the manliness of the Ridd family, and the honour of Exmoor. Hitherto none had worsted me, although in the 3 years of my schooling I had fought more than 80 battles, and bedewed with blood every plant of grass towards the middle of the ironing-box. And this success I owed at first to no skill of my own, until I came to know better, for up to 20 or 30 fights I struck as nature guided me, no wiser than a Father Longlegs in the heat of a lanthorn. But I had conquered, partly through my native strength, and the Exmoor toughness in me, and still more that I could not see when I had gotten my belly full. But now I was like to have that and more, for my heart was down, to begin with, and then Robert Snell was a bigger boy than I had ever encountered, and as thick in the skull and hard in the brain as even I could claim to be. I had never told my mother about these frequent strivings, because she was soft-hearted. Neither had I told my father, because he had not seen it. Therefore, beholding me, still an innocent-looking child, with fair curls on my forehead, and no store of bad language, John Fry thought this the very first fight that ever had befallen me, and so when they let him in at the gate, with a message to the headmasters, as one of the monitors told Cop, and Peggy and Smiler were tied to the railings, till I should be through my business, John comes up to me with the tears in his eyes, and says, "Don't 'ee go for to do it, Jan. Don't thee to do it for good now." But I told him that now it was much too late to cry off. So he said, "The Lord be with thee, Jan, and turn thy thumb-knuckle inwards." It was not a very large piece of ground, in the angle of the causeways, but quite big enough to fight upon, especially for Christians, who loved to be cheek by jowl at it. The great boys stood in a circle around, being gifted with strong privilege, and the little boys had leave to lie flat and look through the legs of the great boys. But while we were yet preparing, and the candles hissed in the fog-cloud, old Phoebe, of more than 80 years, whose room was over the hall porch, came hobbling out, as she always did, to mar the joy of conflict. No one ever heeded her, neither did she expect it, but the evil was that 2 senior boys must always lose the first round of the fight, by having to lead her home again. I marvel how Robin Snell felt. Very likely he thought nothing of it, always having been a boy of a hectoring and unruly sort. But I felt my heart go up and down as the boys came round to strip me, and greatly fearing to be beaten, I blew hot upon my knuckles. Then pulled I off my little cut jerkin, and laid it down on my head-cap, and over that my waistcoat, and a boy was proud to take care of them. Thomas Hooper was his name, and I remember how he looked at me. My mother had made that little cut jerkin in the quiet winter evenings, and taken pride to loop it up in a fashionable way, and I was loath to spoil it with blood, and good filberts were in the pocket. Then up to me came Robin Snell, Mayor of Exeter thrice since that, and he stood very square, and looking at me, and I lacked not long to look at him. Round his waist he had a kerchief busking up his small clothes, and on his feet light pumpkin shoes, and all his upper raiment off. And he danced about in a way that made my head swim on my shoulders, and he stood some inches over me. But I, being muddled with much doubt about John Fry and his errand, was only stripped of my jerkin and waistcoat, and not comfortable to begin. "Come now, shake hands," cried a big boy, jumping in joy of the spectacle. A third foreman, nearly 6 feet high. "Shake hands, you little devils. Keep your pluck up, and show good sport, and Lord love the better man of you." Robin took me by the hand, and gazed at me disdainfully, then smote me painfully in the face ere I could get my fence up. "What be 'bout, lad?" cried John Fry. "Hutton again, Jan, will he? Well done then, our Jan boy." For I had replied to Robin now with all the weight and cadence of a penthemimeral caesura, a thing the name of which I know, but could never make head nor tail of it. And the strife began in a serious style, and the boys looking on were not cheated. Although I could not collect their shouts when the blows were ringing upon me, it was no great loss, for John Fry told me afterwards that their oaths went up like a furnace fire. But to these we paid no heed or hap, being in the thick of swinging, and devoid of judgment. All I know is, I came to my corner, when the round was over, with very hard pumps in my chest, and a great desire to fall away. "Time is up," cried head monitor, ere ever I got my breath again, and when I fain would have lingered a while on the knee of the boy that held me. John Fry had come up, and the other boys were laughing because he wanted a stable lanthorn, and threatened to tell my mother. "Time is up," cried another boy, more headlong than head monitor. "If we count 3 before the come of thee, thwack thou art, and must go to the women." I felt it hard upon me. He began to count. 1, 2, 3, but before the 3 was out of his mouth, I was facing my foe, with both hands up, and my breath going rough and hot, and resolved to wait the turn of it, for I had found seat on the knee of a boy sage, and skill to tutor me, who knew how much the end very often differs from the beginning. A rare ripe scholar he was, and now he hath rooted up the Germans in the matter of criticism. Sure the clever boys and men have most love towards the stupid ones. "Finish him off, Bob," cried a big boy, and that I noticed especially, because I thought it unkind of him, after eating of my toffee as he had that afternoon. "Finish him off, neck and crop. He deserves it for sticking up to a man like you." But I was not so to be finished off, though feeling in my knuckles now as if it were a blueness and a sense of chilblain. Nothing held except my legs, and they were good to help me. So this bout, or round, if you please, was foughten warily by me, with gentle recollection of what my tutor, the clever boy, had told me, and some resolve to earn his praise before I came back to his knee again. And never, I think, in all my life, sounded sweeter words in my ears, except when my love loved me, than when my second and backer, who had made himself part of my doings now, and would have wept to see me beaten, said, "Famously done, Jack, famously. Only keep your wind up, Jack, and you'll go right through him." Meanwhile John Fry was prowling about, asking the boys what they thought of it, and whether I was like to be killed, because of my mother's trouble. But finding now that I had foughten 80 fights already, he came up to me woefully, in the quickness of my breathing, while I sat on the knee of my second, with a piece of spongious coralline to ease me of my bloodshed, and he says in my ears, as if he were clapping spurs into a horse, "Never thee knack under, Jan, or never come nae Exmoor no more." With that it was all up with me. A simmering buzzed in my heavy brain, and a light came through my eye places. At once I set both fists again, and my heart stuck to me like cobbler's wax. Either Robin Snell should kill me, or I would conquer Robin Snell. So I went in again with my courage up, and Bob smiling for victory, and I hated him for smiling. He let me with his left hand, and I gave him my right between his eyes, and he blinked and was not pleased with it. I feared him not, and spared him not, neither spared myself. My breath came again, and my heart stood cool, and my eyes struck fire no longer. Only I knew that I would die sooner than shame my birthplace. How the rest of it was, I know not, only that I had the end of it, and helped to put Robin in bed. End of chapter 2.